It's the Andrew Christopher Show.
Subscribe.
With Andrew Christopher, your host.
This is a subliminal message.
It's the Andrew Christopher Show.
Did you subscribe yet?
But really we call it the AC Show.
Smoke.
Yeah, we really call it the AC Show.
Are you smoking yet?
Really call it the AC Show.
Just kidding, don't smoke. But subscribe if you can.
It's the AC Show.
Pretty please.
It's the AC Show with AC, your host. Check it out.
What's up, you guys? I am very excited, a little bit nervous about today's episode. Very special guest, super intelligent guy going to be joining me, Mr. Steve Rio, who is the CEO and founder of a couple of BC's fastest growing companies. He's got some really important messages and insight on today's society, especially in regards to technology. So I'm stoked to have him on. He's going to be giving me a call in a little bit here. I just wanted to say hi quickly and say thanks again to Nicola for the mukbang. It was very entertaining. People are loving it. It was very delicious. This was the last episode I did. And we talked about being shipped or not being shipped, because this is the new way kids describe people being in a relationship, is they are shipped, which Nicola and I are not. But I think one of my buddies created a burner account under the alias Alberto Vincenzo. Unless you're real, Alberto, if you're out there, Nicola and I are not shipped, but she appreciates you commenting on how attractive she is. So we're going to get to this phone call. Steve's got, as I said, really important message for young families and just individuals. Everybody could take something from this. I'm really excited to have him on. So here's that call. Hello.
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Hey, Steve. How are you?
I'm great.
Great. That's awesome. Thanks so much for giving me a call. This is, I must say, it's quite the honor for me. I don't know if you looked through, but you're my first legitimate guest who I do not know at all.
Hey, do I get like a prize or something like that? Do I get a trophy?
I could make something up for you. I'm happy to do that.
Maybe like a little ribbon or something that I can wear.
Yeah,
I'm into it.
Totally. Yeah, everyone else has been kind of friends and family. But you said you did listen to an episode, so you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, right?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, for sure.
So I was hoping you would just kind of start off and tell the people a little bit about yourself, even kind of where you grew up, things you enjoyed in school and stuff, and kind of then what ultimately led you into all these different types of work that you're involved in right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I grew up in Vancouver, born and raised.
Yeah.
I spent a few early years in Edmonton, and then most of my childhood after the age of 6 in Vancouver. Grew up on the west side, and basically through high school, I basically picked up a guitar when I was about 12, and never really put it down for 10 years.
That's awesome.
And so like for school, for me, was really just get through school and play music as much as possible. And I was in a bunch of bands, and by even in grade 7, I started renting out the local community center and throwing shows and organizing bands and doing all sorts of stuff. And like, I was pretty committed to music through my whole high school life. So that was really like, I didn't spend a ton of time at school.
Yeah.
Except to pick up girls, maybe.
No.
I did okay. I did okay in school. My mom made me get good grades, so I did decently well. But I was really, my whole childhood was all about music.
Yeah, that's really cool. And as I mentioned, I'm a full-time musician now, and so I was hoping we would start off talking with a lot of music because, as I said, you're my first legitimate guest, so I am. You might hear a few butterflies in my voice. I'm quite confident on the stage in between songs, but this is kind of new. So music is a nice fallback for us to go to if things start going awry.
Yeah, 100%.
So you started at age of 12, you said, playing guitar?
Yeah, I think I got my first guitar when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I would strap it on and I just wear it all around the house all day. I practiced a lot.
That's awesome.
Like I was super into it, and I got pretty good. And I was just like really driven to start bands and get all that going. So that was like all the way into my late 20s, that was a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And at the same time, in my early 20s, I got a copy of Photoshop from a friend or something, like a bootleg copy of Photoshop, so that I could start making album covers for myself.
Cool.
And actually, right around that time, like I was doing a show, and I was in Blunt Brothers, which used to be like a pot cafe downtown that burnt down, ironically.
Yeah.
But I was hanging out with the owners there, and they were showing me their full page ad in High Times magazine. And I think I said, I was looking at it, and I said, this is kind of ugly. I think I could do something better. And how much did you pay for this? And they told me what they paid, and I said, well, I'll do it for half that. And that was my first design gig.
Yeah.
And I had never actually opened Photoshop yet, but I basically sold an ad that I had to then figure out how to use Photoshop. And really from there, I started designing, and then somebody asked me if I could code websites, so I started coding websites, and then I just kind of got into that world and really enjoyed coding. Like, to me, coding was just as many flow states and as much fun as music.
Yeah.
Maybe not as deeply cathartic as music, but I just found a real love for it. So around my mid-20s, that's when I started transitioning and thinking about code as a career, or doing websites and doing creative work as a career. And instead of music, that was really the first time I considered anything else. Yeah.
Wow. So did you do any post-secondary schooling, like right out of high school, or was it all music that you were doing?
It's kind of funny. My mom has been a long time. She worked at SFU a lot of her life.
Mm-hmm.
She had a private jobs in her early career, but then was in academics. So I could have gone to university for free, but it never even crossed my mind. I was so focused on music.
Yeah.
It just didn't even cross my mind that would be something I would ever consider. I did go to jazz school for about 3 months, and then I dropped out of that. So I'm a jazz school dropout, basically.
Yeah, I'm a school dropout as well, but it seems to work out okay for the both of us. So what would you say your most successful music project was, as a band or solo, touring wise? Like, did you go across Canada and that kind of thing, or?
I never toured across Canada. No, I toured up like in the West Coast a bit.
Yeah.
I had my early band. It was called Search, and it was before the days of streaming, so none of it's around. But that was my most successful band. Like we were gaining quite a bit of popularity. We were opening for some pretty decent acts in Vancouver.
Cool.
We were really good as a band too. Like we were really a great band. I think. At that time, though, I hadn't really figured out how to combine business and music yet. I just couldn't put the pieces together. I just didn't understand that there was an industry that I needed to figure out and get into and do the whole thing. So that kind of just ended up not going anywhere, despite I think having a few opportunities to make it go somewhere. It just didn't end up happening. So that was probably my most successful, where we'd pack out venues all the time and had a really great following and put out some really great music. But
and what genre was that kind of?
That was it was like it's hard to describe. It was kind of like the era of Dave Matthews and stuff, but I would say it sort of had like Dave Matthews-ish songwriting, but it was basically all Afrobeat and samba and
cool.
funk, like a lot of like real P-funk style, 4 on the floor, dance music. And then with a bunch of, we were also big fans of Tool and stuff, so it would be blending in pretty complex time signatures and things like that, and having a lot of fun with quite complex transitions and changes and stuff. So it was pretty technical music, but it was ultimately dance music that had a strong song behind it.
That sounds really cool, man. I would love to hear some. Do you have any of that, like CDs even, or MP3s in your computer and stuff?
I have CDs around and MP3s, and it's funny, unfortunately, the last thing we recorded, we had all these. We actually had some pretty amazing songs, despite the fact that we really needed a producer to tell us to cut 3 minutes off of each of them. But we had some really great music, and we started recording our final album, but that was around the time our drummer decided he was going to do other things, and we never finished that album. So I have the bed tracks of that album. So I at least have the songs sort of captured, but not with vocals or anything really. So a bit of a bummer, but we have some of our earlier stuff recorded, and then we have a ton of live sets. When our drummer decided he was going to started moving on to other things, we kind of, like a relationship, we broke up but kept sleeping together. So we just kept doing live shows, but we just started improvising the whole night. And we do like these 2-hour funk sets and just improv, like, and write songs on the fly and just have an awesome time and pack out venues and dance all night and stuff. It was really fun. So I have a ton of those recordings, which is cool. Man,
that is so cool. Yeah, I wish I would love to hear some of that. And so are you a big Dave Matthews fan? I heard you mention his name.
I mean, at the time I was, not anymore. At the time it was like, that was the era of the Dave Matthews sound and that kind of stuff. And at that time I was into a lot of jam band music and things like that. But I was also deeply into rap, actually. So I listened to a lot of rap at that time too, which I still listen to today.
Yeah.
So I had that band, and then I played in a punk metal band called Odessa, and that was a really killer group of musicians as well. We didn't play for too long. We played for probably a year and a half. We recorded I think a 5-song demo for that I have CDs of. And then I did a solo album around that time as well in 2007, which is that's the only thing I'd ever ended up on streaming. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, I checked some of that out. It was really cool too. And I was trying to figure out some of your influences for that, which seem a little bit different. Not so much the Tool or Dave Matthews stuff, but some really cool stuff there. Yeah.
What's strange is that, throughout my whole music career, I was often playing music I didn't necessarily listen to.
Yeah.
So I was writing funk and samba and all this stuff with Search, mostly listening to rap. And my bass player, who was a properly trained jazz musician, he would say, "Oh, that's a samba rhythm. You're writing a samba. This is a perfect samba progression kind of thing." And I didn't know that. I just was writing stuff that sounded like that. And then I was putting together a rock band, and then we got really bored as a rock band, but I had heard this amazing, I think they're Swedish punk band called Refused that were around a decade ago. Just unbelievable musicians, and Refused inspired us to turn Odessa into a punk metal band. But I didn't listen to any punk metal. I just wrote a bunch of it. Besides listening to Refused, I just wrote it. And then my solo album, I don't know where all that came from. There's such an eclectic bunch of sounds on there. I don't really know where that came from.
No, that's cool. But that's you singing as well, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I did most of, like, I had bass players come in and play some of that.
Okay.
And drummers come in and do the drumming. And I'm probably missing a couple of little things here and there. Like I had a violinist come in and whatever, but otherwise I basically did everything else. And and I produced it. I recorded all of it. I engineered it and produced it. And then I mixed it with a friend it was all recorded in my home studio, and then we mixed it in a big studio.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
So are you out on Bowen Island right now?
I am. I'm out in the trails wandering around, actually.
That's so cool. I thought I heard footsteps, and I love that, because last time when you texted, you said, "Hey, I'm going out for a walk if you want to podcast right now," and I couldn't. But I think that's so awesome that you get out and get around nature and to get your juices flowing. That's really cool.
Yeah, man. I try to do that every day. Break up my work that way. Yeah. Yeah,
and I love that area. And actually, the original project that I'm involved in right now, we're called Parliament of Owls, and our first song, because we were kind of just friends hanging out. Our wives met through the mom group, and then him and I hung out and drank beer and watched hockey, and then I found out he played music and kind of wrote a few things, but he had never been in bands or anything before. And then we were out on Bowen Island, and we wrote our first song out there called the Vacation Song. And so that was kind of an interesting tie there. But yeah,
nice, man.
It's so cool. And I saw a few things on your Instagram. I haven't dug too deep yet, because I feel like I want to do this thing where I don't creep on people too much, and I actually talk to them first, so I can get a feeling for it, And this is, of course, inspired from just that speech I heard from you, which really lit a fire under my ass. But I saw some of the stuff you were doing farming out there, starting that, and it looks just unreal. Like, it looks like heaven out there, man.
Oh man, it's such a blessing to be out here, and it's really taught me a lot about life. Actually, it's changed my whole perspective on things. It's really the catalyst for starting Nature of Work, I think. I think I've been thinking about personal wellness and performance, and thinking about helping people create their fullest version of themselves and help them achieve their fullest version of themselves. That's always been something that I'm passionate about, but
Yeah.
This has been a whole game changer for me in terms of how I approach life, how I work, how I think about a good life, actually. So it's been really, really neat.
And so let's touch on that first. This Nature of Work is one of the companies you founded.
Yes.
How long ago did this start?
Well, I started researching for Nature of Work. Before I knew what Nature of Work was going to be, or before it had a name,
Yeah.
I started the research that I've been doing probably about over 2 years ago now, and it was really a personal desire and need that I realized for myself when I moved to Bowen and I built this beautiful office, and then realized that despite having this perfect work environment, I couldn't focus, and I felt really distracted and fragmented, and I decided to do something about it. So that's how it all started. It was just me researching and thinking about this for myself, and then I would start talking to people because I'm an extrovert, and I would start talking to people about what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone had a story, and everyone was thinking about this in some way or another, or felt some way about it, and it just started going from there. And then I started thinking about, I'm sort of a framework thinker, so I like to explore a topic and then start to put it together in terms of how do you apply this to life and how do you think about that. So I started putting together a seminar, and I did some seminars last summer, and those went well, and I just got a lot of interest from those. And then around that time, I started thinking, well, the one thing that doesn't exist, there's some great books, there's lots of great content on these subjects.
Yep.
What there isn't is a clear framework, basically a clear set of steps that you can take to implement these best practices into your life. And so we have 3 of us working now, and so we incorporated in January, and we're just getting ready to launch our first product this coming fall.
That's right. Yeah.
That was a long answer to a short question, maybe.
No, that's fantastic, because I tried to touch base on it in that last episode that I think you saw, and I did a terrible job of explaining what the nature of work is. So I'm glad you elaborated, because it's so much.
Nice.
It's so much more than what I thought, and I had to do my research after. It was when I said, "Hey, here's kind of what I was thinking we'll do," blah blah blah, and then you sent me that Google document. And I looked at it and I was like, "Holy shit! I need to look at some of this stuff and get my ducks in a row so I don't look like an idiot."
Nice. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff that I think. And so there's a trial that you guys are putting out right now that's open to the public.
That's right.
And so do you take applications, or is it just kind of anyone can sign up? And
yeah, basically, we're launching our alpha trial. We've already had a just ton of interest, but we're asking for people who want to go through the program for free, kind of ahead of our official launch,
Yeah.
to go through the program free and then participate in some feedback rounds and to give us some insight on what worked, what didn't, so that we can refine the product and make it better. So yeah, the application form is live right now on the website. You can go to natureofwork.co/alpha and sign up for that if you want. We are currently technically oversubscribed, but what we're going to do is go through it and just look for, we've got a few different categories we're looking for. And so we're going to make sure that we've got about 10 people in each of those categories. So we're definitely encouraging people to sign up for that right now. And that will start, then the alpha trial will start mid to late June.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's all about, like you said, realizing or helping people realize their full potential and focus in on and being productive, so that they can make the most of every minute of every day, pretty much, right? And when they have a task, being able to focus on that task. And you put in even about meditation and there's just all sorts of different facets to it, just to help people live the fullest life and the best life that they can. Is that kind of a good gist of it, kind of thing?
Yeah, that is. I think there's the simple way to think about it. We think of it as there's 2 sides to what we're doing and helping people with. One is performance. So everything you just talked about, focus, attention, learning capacity, creativity, ability to think and produce deep work, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But along with that comes a bunch of practices that will improve the quality of your life, improve your mental well-being,
Right.
lower stress and anxiety,
Better sleep.
all of those things.
Yeah.
Explain how to get better sleep and provide a really step-by-step process on how to do that, and how to understand and respect your natural physiology so that you not only perform better, but you feel better.
Yeah. So I got to bring this up because one of my things that irks me about my wife sometimes, and she knows this, she'll be listening, is she loves falling asleep with the TV on. And for me, I can't stand it. I love having the quiet and nothing going. And I always tell her without any real science or anything that it's bad for her. So can you back me up on that? Falling asleep to the TV, good or bad?
You want me to wade into a conversation between you and your wife? Yeah, I would love to do that, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of crazy to sleep with the TV on personally. I think that people have built habits around that. I know a bunch of people who are like that, and it's not super uncommon.
No.
But in terms of getting a high quality sleep, that I can't really imagine, a worse way to do it.
And I feel like this is where a program like this could really help, because the reason she's doing this is because of anxieties, or that if it's not on, kind of distracting her, then her brain's going a mile a minute thinking about other things. And I think it's just that we haven't found a good way to calm that down without the TV distracting her. And I would imagine. Yeah,
and that makes sense, right? Like a lot of people, that's just true for a lot of people. And so I totally understand that. And yeah, I think we're just at a time where there is so much noise and so much information coming at us all the time that our brains are completely overwhelmed. And what happens when our brains don't have any downtime to process or to relax and do the correlation and processing that our subconscious minds need to do, is anxiety arrives. Like, just anxiety comes up because our brains are anxious, they are overwhelmed, they're stressed out, and we're seeing that in society right now. There's some really interesting anecdotes in Cal Newport's new book, where one of the people he talks to is this woman who's a psychologist or a counselor inside of a college, and she describes it as this wave that just hit students went from 0 to 100, where suddenly people were just constantly in her office talking about anxiety, and she had never really seen that. She said before that, and the stats kind of back this up, that anxiety disorders were a fairly uncommon thing. Whereas now most people, like almost everybody on some level, is dealing with some anxiety. And for a lot of people, it's pretty bad. So it's not uncommon at all that this is the case. No,
that's right. And it's unreal. And that was kind of another thing I wanted to touch on, is how you said the anxiety and the depression is getting so much worse and so much more prevalent, and being linked to a lot of the new technology and apps and all these things going around. And because I read, and I don't read much, but it's another thing I'd like to start changing. But I read your article on social media being the new tobacco, and that was fantastic read. One of the, believe it or not, longest articles I've ever read. And I was so intrigued, and especially because we have an 11-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old daughter, and a baby boy on the way. And the 11-year-old has a phone, and she's been, just starting to experience all this social media, and I can already see it getting out of control. And so that was, one of the big things after listening to you talk, that I was like, okay, we need to start actually looking into this and figuring out what damage it's doing, how we can control it. And, just trying to educate her a bit more, the 11-year-old, on why we're trying to not take her phone away, but decrease her time on these apps, and trying to make her see why likes aren't important, that people can like you without liking your photos. And it's, totally. There's so much. And, it's something we're really struggling with in our house right now. And a lot of my viewers and listeners are young families or just young
Right.
people in general. That
Yeah, man.
that I'm very determined to start making a change, obviously from the top in myself on my phone and all these kind of things, and just trying to help other people see, well, and especially see what they're missing in the world with all this time that we're spending on phones and Facebooks and Instagram and all that. So I was
Yeah.
I was curious to know about your kind of not digging too deep into the personal life, but your kind of family rules or rules for yourself and how you did that, because you said you had a daughter. How old is she now?
Well, she's 20.
Yeah. And
It's originally my wife's daughter, and I adopted her when she was 13. So I came into her life just as she was turning 13.
Yeah.
My wife had her when she was pretty young, like when she was 20. So it was interesting because I had never been a parent until I just kind of dropped into teenage world, which is kind of crazy. Sort of what you're kind of basically like a year later than the world you're just entering into now with your daughter. So you can probably relate to some of it.
Yeah, of course.
Basically, like at that time, like this is a decade ago. She's 20 now, so this is not quite a decade ago. It's like 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
At that time, she had her phone. She had her we got a laptop for high school. She had devices. We had an iPad around the house. She'd sometimes have all three of those going at once.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how that's possible, but she would. But it's interesting, at that time, this discussion wasn't a thing yet. Like what we were concerned with at that time was, let's make sure she's not being approached by sexual predators, that she's staying safe, that she's not giving out personal information, like what social networks is she on, who is she talking to, making sure she's basically safe in that respect, right? That was the discussion at the time. The internet is a dangerous place for children, basically.
Yeah.
And it still is, and that's still a relevant conversation. But it was actually watching her go through high school that I started to really reflect on, man, what are these tools doing to us, and how do they affect us? How do they impact us emotionally and psychologically? And that was really the time when I went from being this tech evangelist. I grew up just being a tech evangelist and really loving all technology and all innovation, and just kind of thinking anything that Silicon Valley was doing was cool. And it was through that experience of watching my daughter grow up that really started to shift. And honestly, we didn't have rules in place because we didn't even know that was a thing at that time. Yeah. And so now I think it's super important for parents to understand just how much these tools can impact your psychological well-being. Mm-hmm. And especially as a kid whose brain is still developing, whose social understandings are just, your daughter's 11. She's just coming into the era of her life where social activity is the number one priority of the brain, like is understanding how she relates to the world and how the world relates to her. Right.
Right.
And figuring out all those components. Like that's why when kids are going into high school in grade 8 and 9 and stuff like that, around those ages, it's hard to keep them focused on anything because all they care about is their friends and the boys and the whatever, all the stuff going on.
Yeah.
Because that's the era of that's when you're supposed to be. That's you're naturally developing those parts of your brain and your understanding of the world. So I just think, and what social media does is it basically replaces natural human connections that we need, mm-hmm. and it replaces them with synthetic versions that don't actually provide us the social connections that we need to be healthy and happy.
That's right.
That's the simplest way to put it, is that likes replace a natural need that we've had for all of evolution for understanding our social status. Mm-hmm. It was really key when you were in a tribe to understand, how you fit into the rest of the community, and if you were lower or higher status, or if your status was going down, because that was actually put you at risk of being left out. If the tribe was going to move, they might leave you because you're not contributing enough, or you're not participating, or you're not well liked. So status is a very important factor in our evolution. Yet it's been hijacked by social media, by likes and all these things. So our brain naturally responds to it, but it's like the crack version of social status, and it's completely synthetic, and it doesn't provide any actual connection. So what ends up happening is our time the time that we would spend socially, like connecting socially in real life with people, gets replaced by a synthetic, and that synthetic isn't providing any of the social connection we need, and it's also distorting our belief systems and understandings of our social world.
Yeah, it's a great way of explaining it, and it's to see what she's viewing as being liked, and even asking these questions on Instagram, about, oh, do you like my new braces or whatever, and it's unreal, and I could see it's being very dangerous, and I told my wife, I said, after this episode, the hammer's coming down. Like, I'm going to get some info here, and I'm going to be doing some research and coming at you with facts. And I mean, I think the main thing for a family situation is it has to start from the top down, obviously being, myself and my wife, taking a look at ourselves and seeing what we need to do differently. And I saw something about that in your article, whereas, the biggest difficulty is, just like any other addiction, is admitting to yourself, yes, okay, I have a problem, and it's influencing these people I'm supposed to take care of, and these people I'm supposed to help progress and develop and grow in this world. And it's hard to admit that to yourself, that you've been making mistakes that are, ultimately hindering your kids. And it's, it's a scary thing, but if you don't admit it sooner rather than later, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. So that's definitely, I think, the crossroads where we're at. And I started going through the screen time app on my phone. I feel like that's at least a okay place to start, and you can look at it, and it breaks it down pretty good for you. So trying to, just in a fun way, say, let's see who can be on their phone less, or see who can do the social media part of it the least this week or something. I don't know. I'm trying to think of different ways to almost make it fun, to do challenges and maybe rewards. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a few thoughts in there is, one is that right now, everyone, including myself, like I'm teaching this stuff and I'm writing about this stuff, and I still am dealing with the same compulsion issues that everyone else is, because these are very addictive tools. They're designed to be as addictive as possible. It is by no mistake that we are all compulsively checking our phone 75 times a day, or that we're spending upwards of 3 to 4 hours on our devices a day on average as adults. This is by design, and this was the intention of these technology companies, of Facebook, of these companies who hire large departments of people whose whole specialty is making their tools more addictive. So the first thing to recognize is that this isn't a unique thing. It's not your wife. It's not you. It's everyone. And that it's by design. This was a choice. And that's why I wrote the article back in 2017 about tobacco, the connection to tobacco, and that both industries knew very well what they were doing in terms of making it as addictive as possible. Both industries are aware of the damage that they are doing, and both industries technology is just entering into the realm where people are starting to ask big questions, but we'll see if they actually respond the way that tobacco did, which was to form big alliances and lobbying bodies and to lie for 40 years.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But the second point I'd say, are just around thinking about how to tackle it with your kids. And I take this from somebody who I spoke with, who has done this with their own kids, is I think that to help them illuminate for themselves how these tools make them feel. Because I think one of the things, and I don't know if you've seen this behavior yet, but a lot of people see this, is that screen time makes kids cranky. Dude. It makes them upset.
Oh my goodness.
It changes their mood dramatically. They don't feel good after screen time. And I think it's a powerful message to your kids, and having the belief that they can hear these type of messages to say, how do you feel compared to when you just, before you were on the screen to now? How do you feel? Because I noticed that you're pretty irritable right now, or you don't seem happy, or you don't seem like you're in a good mood. My dog's starting to run around and go nuts here. But that was a starting point. And the second thing is to explain to them as much as best you can at their age is that, while these tools just feel like they're you and your friends hanging out somewhere, these are tools designed by people who have very different incentives than you do. These tools are, that's how I suggest to people, adults in general, to gauge whether they should use a tool or be careful of a tool is, what are your incentives and intentions with that tool, and what is the company's? Because Instagram's number one intention is to show you as many advertisements as possible.
Yeah.
And that's their only intention. It's not to make you feel better. It's not to show you what your friends are up to. It's not to do anything. It's not to make your life richer. It's to sell advertising to others with and to collect your data. That's the two things. That's all it's supposed. That's this whole job. So
Yeah.
I think explaining that to kids a little bit in some way is good, but also just pointing out to them, hey, talking about their behavior, talking about how they feel, and having them decide for themselves that, what, I get it. It doesn't really make me feel super good. And I think there's some really interesting things right now because the social demands of teenage girls is really crazy. Where, like, we participated in a thing when my daughter was still in high school, where a bunch of kids came from a different school so that they could speak anonymously to the parents of our school. And it was like this roundtable thing, and there's a facilitator asking questions, and they asked them, what's the most stressful thing about high school? And the girls said, point blank, all of them, social media. That's it. And it was because it created this, again, it's like this hyperactive version of social hierarchy in high school. It's like we all know that in high school, the social hierarchy world is kind of screwed up. There can be some really nasty things that happen. You're just figuring out life, right? But social media dehumanizes it. It escalates it. It creates these anonymous channels so that you can be far worse to each other than you ever would be in normal. And it creates this very competitive, very quantitative way of measuring your success as a high school student in the social hierarchy.
Right. By how many followers or likes you get, then you're the most popular. Yeah. Of
totally.
course.
It's a huge problem because that's what teenage girls and boys to some extent are trying to figure out anyway. That's already what they're trying to figure out is like, how do I fit in?
Yeah.
Who do I fit in with? Like, what is cool? Is it cool to be smart, or is it cool to, fuck around and do drugs? Is it cool to, like, what's cool and what's right, and who do I like, and how do I fit in? And so I think that you got to, like, kids need to understand what's happening there so that they can make good choices. Because I think I think anytime you just tell a kid, no, you can't just because, anytime you say anything with just because, you're losing the battle.
Yeah, you're just confusing them even more, right?
Yeah, and you're going to make them go do it behind your back.
Yeah, and you're not showing much leadership, or when you're supposed to be the role of the parent and knowing and having answers, then that really will not help.
But I think leading by example, like I know that my daughter now is very aware of the stuff I talk about and makes choices around it. And while I think that I would love to see her more disconnected from the internet than she is, and her gaming habits and stuff, like I would like those to be lesser, but I think she's also quite aware of it and does the work to manage it. And I've led by example, and that's important. But it's funny because, like, it is, again, I won't keep beating the smoking analogy, but
no,
it's just like if you smoke, if you and I smoke cigarettes, and I'm trying to quit, but you're sitting in the room next to me and you just pull out a cigarette and light it, like the chance of me not having a smoke goes down like hugely. And, it's like all the statistics on if your family is obese, your chance of obesity. If your family smokes, your chance of smoking. If your family has alcoholics in it, your chance of alcoholism. It's the exact same parameters for technology, compulsion, and addiction. Yeah. So when others in the if you've ever noticed this, and I think most people have, it's like when one person pulls out their phone in a group, everybody else does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's compulsive behavior. Because that's what you do when you have an addiction.
Yeah.
And you see the behavior, and then your brain goes, "Oh yeah, I'm addicted. I like that behavior too. Let's do it."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in the house, it's a really great practice to put a box in the front foyer of your house.
Yeah.
And to have a rule that when you come home, your phones go in the box.
Yeah.
And a great practice is also just time boxing your social media use. Like, there is some, need for people to stay connected and text back their friends or whatever. I would suggest you try and find the highest quality connections you can make. So more phone calls than texts, more in person than phone calls, and just stay on that ladder. But
I love that.
Way,
on your signature, on your signature of your emails, how it says you prefer phone calls. I love that. It's so cool. Yeah.
Absolutely, because it makes my day better if I get to talk to people.
Yeah.
If I have to just email back and forth to people all day, that's not a very fun day.
No, yeah.
Because I get no social connection, and as human beings, we wither up and die if we don't get social connection. And that's the crazy thing that's happening right now is people are so isolated because of social media that all these other mental illness issues are coming up. So it's totally a bizarre time for all of that. But anyway, at home, just to look at setting some ground rules with each other and decide with each other what you'll do, but leading by example in that way and reducing the amount of technology that's just around.
Mm-hmm.
What's super interesting is that, I'm sorry, I'm breathing heavy because I'm walking up a big hill, but
it's all good.
I haven't walked up a big hill on a podcast yet, so that's my first for the day. Is that in Silicon Valley, the guys, the engineers who work on all this software, they have strict contracts with their nannies that forbid them from exposing their kids to technology whatsoever, or from their kids seeing their nannies on technology. Like, they don't allow that at all.
No.
Steve Jobs his kids didn't have iPads or iPhones until they were 20 or 18 or 19 or something.
Yeah, I saw that
Bill
in the
Gates'
article
kid.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, like the people who made all this stuff, they don't let their kids touch it.
No, and that's got to be pretty telling. Like, if that doesn't
100%.
tell you that there's something worrisome about it, then
Yeah.
So I was thinking of ways, like you said, the phone calls and stuff, and I was thinking, putting some rules out there for myself about, even just making a couple phone calls a week, which I don't really, that last at least 5 minutes. Like I can't remember the last time I talked on the phone this long with anybody. Like, I've had a few guests come in studio and talk to them or whatever, but phone calls, like last night I called my mom. It was Mother's Day, obviously. So, but I just made a point of getting that conversation to at least 5 minutes, which really is not long. But I was like, okay, I'm going to give her my attention. I parked the car, like I was driving, but I pulled over. I was like, okay, going to talk to her and only her, think about her for 5 minutes. And I'm just trying to think of like other friends. I'm going to say, hey, can we do this? Let's have a talk. And because it's, for me, it's completely lost. I've never talked much on the phone. And I can see that it's the isolation thing mostly. Like, even if you're texting or if you're messaging someone on Facebook, you still do feel isolated, that you're not really connected to that person.
100%.
Yeah, there's just some of these small realizations I'm coming to, and again, thanks to just listening to you, man. Like, it's been eye opening, and I just want you to know I'm definitely on your team. Whatever team you've created, I'm there with you.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And and that's honestly my intention. It's so interesting what you just touched on there. You just touched on pulling over and focusing just on that conversation. Yeah. And it's so interesting when you look at studies on what actually makes the human brain happy. And we spend so much of our day and time and our life focusing on multiple things at once and rushing through things that it ends up us living on the surface level of life all the time. And when things slow down a bit, when you create space, when you create time for connection, when you create time for reading and for deeper thinking, or even just for daydreaming or whatever, it's amazing that the quality of your life just goes up. Like, that's what we were designed for.
Yeah, man. Like, I felt so emotional. I can still feel it. Like, I'm getting emotional just talking about it. I was like, it felt so good to just sit and talk to my mom, which, I see her every week at some of my gigs or whatever, but to just dedicate that time. Yeah. I was feeling emotional after it.
That's very cool.
Yeah. It was a really awesome feeling. What's the dog's name?
Oh, you're hearing my neighbor's dog barking, I think.
Oh, there you go.
That's Jimmy. That's Jimmy barking. We're just getting back to the house.
There you go. That's great.
Yeah, I got 2 dogs. I have Bamboo, and I have Miso. Bamboo's a Ridgeback Pit miscellaneous from the SPCA.
Right on.
And then Miso is a Ridgeback Pit on one side and an American Bulldog on the other side. So 2 big dogs.
Yeah, that's cool. We got a couple cats, and one of them clawed our 5-year-old so bad yesterday. Like, she was obviously messing around a bit, and he got her like right along the neck. It was
damn,
pretty brutal. So she's all bandaged up. Didn't even go to school today. She was too embarrassed because she didn't want kids making fun of her or asking what happened. So
too bad.
I would rather have dogs, but we can't right now, unfortunately. But
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I know I said I was only going to keep you like 20 minutes or whatever, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do really appreciate this, and I think there's some really important stuff you threw out that I hope some families will take home. And obviously there's a ton of stuff out there on information that you have, especially at thenatureofwork.co, right? That's where, if people are looking to improve their lives and their families' lives. Yeah.
That's where they'll find information about our program coming up. And honestly, our program is pretty accessible. It's a 6-week program. It's about anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes a week of reading or listening. So it's not very much content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really condensed. We spent a lot of time condensing it.
Yeah.
We've condensed like 100 hours of content into about 6. And,
wow.
and then it's a workbook, like a field guide that you get with a bunch of practices that you track and some journaling that you do every day. But you add about 10 or 15 minutes a day of new stuff, of new practices. And just with that, and just by changing your perspective on some things and making some choices, it can have a pretty profound impact. So I think for anybody, like even young parents, like I know how hectic it is.
Mm-hmm.
All of my friends have young kids right now too. And even for young parents or people in the careers and like busy in your careers and stuff, it's really designed for people to fit into your real lives. So, I encourage everybody to check it out and to follow. You can also just follow our Instagram. We post a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah.
And then I also have natureofwork.tumblr.com.
Okay.
That's where I just post a ton of any random articles. Like, I read a lot and I post a lot of them to there. So it's just a stream of consciousness really on Tumblr.
Cool.
But yeah, natureofwork.co is the best place to follow us.
Hey, can I bug you about one more thing quick before you go?
You got it.
Just kind of on a personal level for myself, because as I said, I obviously do a ton of social media stuff, posting and, marketing for myself, for my gigs or my original music or, this podcast that I'm trying to get going. And I feel like you must do quite a bit of online work as well. How do you manage your screen time and kind of those posts? And, I'm assuming you have a pretty good handle on it and it's not too much of a battle in your head. But, kind of how do you stay engaged with your fans or whatever, for lack of a better term, but still being conscious of keeping that time for yourself? What kind of structure do you have for your screen time? Or what could you suggest to me to make the most of it instead of just messing around on there all day and making the excuse that I'm doing it for work, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just 3 quick things. First thing is to stay off your phone first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So if you can get the first 30 minutes of your day technology free and spend that in a calm and focused way, it can really change the way it just starts. It really it's like the first domino falling. Yep. And I find that's really effective. It's actually the first chapter in our program. It's all about that. It has a bunch of science, but it also has, that's kind of the first sets of practices, is introducing mindfulness into your morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of these tools, you're right. Like, these are tools that we use for work, for marketing, for all the stuff we want. But keyword is using them as tools. Yeah. And so the second thing I'd say is time boxing and scheduling when you're going to be on them and what you're going to be doing on them. Yeah. So I put it into my calendar. I have specific admin blocks that are 30 minutes long that I'm going to go in and check my email and respond to people. I might do a post on Instagram, but I'm not spending time like randomly flicking through Instagram a ton at all. Yeah. Like, I spend about 15 minutes a day on Instagram, and I'm trying to post quite a bit because I'm also trying to build my own following.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just point out the irony in that really our program is about getting people off Instagram, and we're using it as a marketing tool. So
Yeah.
I really look at that as can we use these channels that people are on to get them off of it so that they never get bought again. So it's kind of interesting. Like I have a bit of a more ethical struggle with using these platforms to market, but it's also where everybody is right now.
Yeah, of course. And I feel that too, as I was saying, because I do want to start using these less. And I think something I kind of thought of was just planning the posts ahead of time. Like you can be thinking about the post and think, okay, this is the picture I'm going to use. This is what I'm going to say. I don't have to sit on my phone for 10 minutes figuring that out. Like you can kind of have it planned out ahead of time so that you can just go and execute.
Like I think one thing along the lines of that I'd say is these tools, like email, even any of these things, they just are like a black hole, right?
Yeah.
You get on them and you end up doing something you didn't know you were going to do, and you forget why you were there in the first place.
Yeah. So
one quick trick I do is I'll jot down the things that I want to do on paper before I open the tool. So if I'm going to go do, update my story, I'm going to go message back this guy about a podcast, I'm going to go do these 3 things. I write those down so that when I go into the platform, that's all I'm doing. And same thing with email. It's like respond to these 3 people because those are high priority things. Forget the rest of my email because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so just being really mindful and conscious of what you're doing there, and then time box it, schedule it. So there's no reason for us to be checking our email or getting notifications from social media or anything else all day long. It really isn't valuable. No. There's no point. And so the last thing I would say, I think this is 3 or 4, maybe I said 3, but last thing I would say is think about putting your phone on do not disturb mode all the time.
Yeah.
And the way you can do that is you can add the most important people to your life. So your daughter, your mom, your wife, your family, and your closest friends. You add them to the starred list or whatever it's called, the favorites list, and then they can actually get through to you if they call or text.
Yes.
But everybody else, there's no notification. And it just stops all the buzzing that's happening in your pocket, which is just obviously a key reason to pick up your phone and look at it all day. So that's been a big difference for me is my phone lives in do not disturb mode all the time. And I check it when I plan to check it, not compulsively and not because it just buzzes constantly. So some app wants to update me on some bullshit.
Yeah, man. Then there's a lot of bullshit out there. That's really cool. I really, really appreciate this. As you saw, and as I said, it's a modest beginning podcast, and I just really appreciate the real talk and help with some of the issues that I'm facing with my family. It's really commendable work that you're doing, and I hope we can continue to be in touch. And if there's ever anything I can do to help you out or vice versa, I'd be very happy to do so. And you might get a surprise phone call from me once in a while just to chat, and I won't be heartbroken if you do not pick it up. But I
appreciate that, man. No, I appreciate it. I think it's commendable that you're thinking about this stuff. It's great. It'll make a big difference in the lives of your daughters and your fourth or third coming son. So.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Steve.
Good
I'll let you go. All the best to you and your family and in your businesses, and I'll be posting some links so people can check out your stuff. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. So there you go, you guys. Mr. Steve Rio. Oh, my lovely daughter's knocking at the door. I'll just be 2 minutes, okay, sweetie? Awesome conversation. And really commendable work that he's doing. Let me know if you have any other questions, or check out Steve's website, natureofwork.co. If you want to get in on that trial, this is an incredible opportunity to try out this program for free to help better your lives in general. If you have trouble sleeping, if you have trouble with depression or anxiety or focus, if you want to work at something new and want a better structure in your life, check it out. Try and get on the trial, or just buy the program. As he said, it's very accessible and very doable for anybody, depending on what walks of life you're in. I'm going to wrap this up. We got to go pick up Jaden, right? Yeah. So one more time, thank you, Steve. Really appreciate it. And hope you guys have enjoyed it. And as always, subscribe.
It's the Andrew Christopher Show. With Andrew Christopher, your host. It's the Andrew Christopher Show. But really we call it the AC Show. Yeah, we really call it the AC Show. Really call it the AC Show. It's the AC Show.
It's the AC show with AC, your host. Check it out.